I'm too nostalgic, I'll admit it.
We graduated 4 months ago. What can you possibly be nostalgic for?
I'm nostalgic for conversations I had yesterday. I've begun reminiscing events before they even occur. I'm reminiscing this right now. I can't go to the bar because I've already looked back in it in my memory, and I didn't have a good time.
Welcome back to the Thinking Critical Comic Book Podcast. It's time for another comic book retrospective. This week, we're going to talk about the Legion of Superheroes. We're going back to 1965 Adventure Comics 330 through 332 and 335 and 336. As with me, as always, are the men that like to go back in the Wayback Machine, talk about these classics. People might not know this, Joe Corallo. You're not only a comic book writer, you're award-winning editor. You are an amazingly big Legion of Superheroes fanboy.
I sure am.
So I imagine you're very excited. We also have Eric Breed. Does this bring up memories of a kid when Legion of Superheroes were like one of the most popular team books in comics?
It kind of does.
So me personally, I have not read a lot of Legion of Superheroes. I've read the Brian Michael Bendis stuff. I wish I hadn't. And other than that, I hadn't read much of them. I'm feeling like I made an enormous mistake here, Joe, because this reminds me of all the wonderful like 1950s, 60s, 40s sci-fi movies that I really enjoy. And I got a lot of those kind of vibes to this story. I ended up quite enjoying both of them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, most of these stories were written by Edmund Hamilton, who's a big sci-fi author years before doing comics. So that's where you're going to get that. I mean, I think he started in the 20s or 30s, like writing sci-fi, like prose. And he's also just a big, like he was someone who kept a lot of the continuity in his head and acted like a historian when tackling characters like in the Legion.
Absolutely. So not only are we getting Edmund Hamilton, we're also getting Jerry Siegel, co-creator of Superman. So we got two very important creators as far as writers. We got Jim Mooney illustrating and John Forte as well. Mm-hmm. So Breed, when we think about the Legion of Superheroes, why is this team important? And where do these characters come from?
Well, they were created in the late 50s as a vehicle to give Superboy another set of stories to appear in. And it's I think the first appearance was in Adventure Comics 247. And the response was so good, it just grew from there. And by the early to mid 60s, they were a fully fledged team, and the universe just kept getting bigger and bigger. And this was kind of like this was before the Teen Titans. This was a younger alternative for fans that might have wanted more teams to go with the Justice League. This was like a junior version of it, but it was set in the future. And that's probably why they eventually created the Teen Titans, to give a contemporary counterpart to the Justice League. But yeah, this was, like I said, the Legion was a lot of fun. Yeah, it's just, I said, it was something to go with the Justice League, I guess.
Yeah, it's crazy that Marvel and DC, they don't seem to have this the magic worked out that the Legion of Superheroes had back in the day, to where it was a younger superhero team, but it was quite profitable. A lot of people were drawn to the characters. It's unfortunate we don't have anything quite like this anymore, Joe Corallo. But in March 1965 and to September of 1965, or when these comics were released, is there anything important going on within comic books besides Adventure Comics and the Legion of Superheroes?
Yeah, always. I mean, what was it? Right now, you had, during this, Spider-Man was making that transition from Steve Ditko just being credited as the illustrator to getting that co-plotter credit that he got in Amazing Spider-Man 25. Which I believe is the first appearance of Smythe in the what would become the Spider Slayers, but I don't think they call it a Spider Slayer in that issue. Then you also had over in Fantastic Four, this is around issues like 36, 37, 38, like in that chunk where you get the Frightful Four coming in. You have that storyline where they kind of manipulate the Thing into helping them fight the Fantastic Four, but this is during the introduction of the Inhumans and everything that's leading up to that Galactus trilogy. So yeah, you get a lot of interesting. Oh, and in X-Men, you get I think it's X-Men issue 10 where we get Kazar being reintroduced to the Silver Age. A lot of people to this day incorrectly credit Kazar as appearing first in X-Men number 10, and they are wrong. Anyone who tells you that Kazar came then, wrong. The character was created in the Golden Age, in Marvel Mystery Comics 22, I want to say. It was the first appearance of the Savage Land and Kazar. So that stuff's been around for a long time.
Absolutely. We're going to get a lot of first appearances of several characters in here. One that's been lost to time, Joe Corral. I can't believe that he just left this character out there. Obviously, we're going to get into that. First up, we've got Adventure Comics 330. And if you're reading these, there's a major story that's like Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes. And then there's a backup Superboy story. We're only going to do the Legion of Superhero stuff. And each of these are like two-parters, just a different kind of format from a lot of the comics that I've read kind of in the Silver Age. But the first one is The Secret of the Mystery Legionnaire. This is Jerry Siegel writing, Jim Mooney on art. The art on these is absolutely spectacular. I love the dynamicism. Obviously, we'll get into some of that stuff. But all the sci-fi elements and everything in this comic book are just fantastic. The first thing we get introduced to is, I believe it's called Pirate Planet. Yes. And shockingly, it's full of criminals. And they do not like the Legion of Superheroes, and they want to infiltrate them. And they're looking for volunteers. Some younger villains named Parg and Vorm decide they both want to do it, so they have to duel to see who's going to get the honors. And it turns out Vorm is victorious when he uses a power belt to kill Parg, and he gets selected to infiltrate the Legion of Superheroes breed. Very, very exciting opening stuff right here. And it's too bad Vorm doesn't end up being a kind of a bigger character long term.
Well, I particularly liked, and I remember this is 1965. You didn't kill characters as a matter of course in those days. And when they're battling, he disintegrates Parg, and there's the guy in the background going, "Bye-bye, Parg. We hate losers." That's great. You've got this little punk gets his orders to go infiltrate the Legion. I loved how they introduced him.
When he's looking at the camera and you can see that he's the most villainous person in the room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the first page.
Yeah.
Yes. It's quite apparent who's going to be the big villain in this. Or it turns out he's not. Maybe he isn't the big villain in this, Joe. Because after that, he meets Starboy. And he decides he needs to infiltrate the Legion of Superheroes. So he impresses him with his superpowers. Starboy invites Vorm back to try out for the Legion of Superheroes. And the rest of the Legion are immediately won over by his powers. He's invited to join, and he gets a wonderful name, Dynamo Boy. Joe Corral, that is a great name for the Legion of Superheroes.
It really is. And, I'll also say with Jim Mooney here on the art, I think he's very good at facial expressions.
Yes, he is.
He's very good. I think he's stronger suited to that than John Forte. No offense to John Forte. I think John Forte really created that. Yeah.
Like technology kind of stuff in the second part of the story with the other artist.
Yeah. Although you gotta love the technology in the Legion of Superheroes, because you look at that first splash page, like you pointed out with Dynamo Boy. And it's like, their base is a rocket that's really slim. It must be bigger on the inside than the outside. But also, it's like, I guess even in the years 3065 or whatever they're claiming this is, they're sitting around what looks like a wooden table, because Monel smashes it with his fist, and it's like particles are coming up. And then they've clearly got either paper or wooden nameplates in front of them. Mm-hmm. I just love that stuff. But yeah, you see all this stuff where Dynamo Boy gets in, and then in the first part of this is able to sort of manipulate things to get Colossal Boy and Monel kicked out of the Legion. Colossal Boy gets kicked out for lying.
Yeah.
But that's because he's manipulating the the hyper polygraph, which is better than a regular polygraph, you 20th century simpletons. And then he like escalates it really quickly. He goes
That's the crazy thing, Joe. If this was a modern story, this would take a year to pay off. They're paying it off in the second half of the first issue.
Oh, yeah. But I mean, it goes from I'm going to get Colossal Boy out for lying, and then I'm going to get Monel kicked out for being unable to stop a genocide.
Yeah, he's a coward. Get him out of here. He's a bum.
Yeah, he makes his Ultima weapon invisible to prevent him from stopping the destruction of a whole planet. And I also really want to stress that the Force villains that blow up this planet, they like forget about after this. No one
never
goes,
get
like,
justice.
You know, they're just like, wait, shouldn't we stop those like couple of Force villains that can destroy a planet instantly? Like, shouldn't we like go looking?
Monel's a coward. He failed us. It's time to talk to him first.
Yeah, but yeah, then we get a sad Monel having to fly away with like he doesn't need a flight ring like all the other ones, and the flight ring was only introduced, I think, the issue before where they fought the Bizarro Legion. Before that, they had those belts,
mm-hmm.
You know, the flying belts, and but now they got those flight rings, and those flight rings. Think about it, though. That's part of the Legion legacy to this day, are those flight rings. So it's a big deal.
Absolutely. And so after this, his plan is going in full force, Braid, and he gets the entire Legion of Superheroes like kicked out because they were tampering with like a power switch device. He announces himself the leader, so Dynamo Boy by the end of the issue is the leader of the Legion of Superheroes, and he begins like recruiting super beings looking for pirates. What a great story, Braid. I hate this guy already.
Yeah, okay, let's how about the brand new member comes in and he kicks out two of the long-standing members and nobody else questions it because those bylaws must have been so ironclad. And who left the superpower switch ray just sitting on a table where any irresponsible teen could get a hold of it?
Yeah. Well, clearly the most powerful Legionnaire was Bylaws lad.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Bylaws come up a lot. The charter.
This is a great story, but yeah, like I said, I always refer to Eglantine has a phrase called Silver Age silliness, and it is on full display in this, despite it being a really fun story to read.
Oh, yeah.
It's just, yeah, like I said, I'd love to join a club that would just let me come in and kick out anybody the hell I wanted to.
And that's exactly what he does. And we get into Adventure Comics 331. This is called The Triumph of the Legion of Supervillains. Jerry Siegel, Jim Moody once again. And Dynamo Boy is the leader. He's looking for pirates, but his recruiting plan sucks, Joe. Everyone that he's trying to recruit does not make the cut. They all suck. He's ready to give up, and then the Legion of Supervillains arrive. They tell him that they've been reformed, so they want to join the Legion of Superheroes. And then they end up having a battle with, is it the Legion of Substitute Heroes?
Yeah.
I love all the names. And it turns out they haven't reformed, and they all decide to fall in with Dynamo Boy for their own mutual gain.
Yeah, and I believe this is only the second appearance of the Legion of Supervillains, too. They had previously defeated them, and I think this was only their second appearance. But yeah, the Substitute Legion have been around for a little while, and, not going to spoil it for you, but some of these members might make it into the main Legion of Superheroes at some point. Just keep your eye out if you're reading these in chronological order.
Nice.
Oh, so it's the second appearance of the Legion of Substitute Heroes.
Well, this is, I know it's the second appearance of the Legion of Supervillains, but the Legion of Substitute Heroes have been around for a little bit, but I'm not sure I'd have to go back and double check. But this is also an early appearance of them.
Okay, you're talking about, I said keep your eye out for, because some of those are going to end up in the Legion.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe Polar Boy or something. I don't know why I'm mentioning Polar Boy, but he might become a member of the Legion of Superheroes.
You gotta love like the Legion of Superheroes. We got the Legion of Supervillains, the Legion of Substitute Heroes. Like, oh, these names are just fun and stupid. So they're followed in line together, and so Dynamo Boy, Breen, he ends up having to return to Pirate Planet and seize control over his organization after like the leader was plotting against him. And while he's doing this, the Legion of Supervillains shockingly decided to take control over what Dynamo Boy was doing and kind of take control of the Legion of Superheroes. They set up a bunch of fake tombstones on Earth. They say they killed the entire Legion except for Superboy. And then they use the Saturn Queen's hypnosis ability to trick Dynamo into entering a time machine. And he realizes too late that he's heading to 1 trillion years AD, stranded forever, Bree.
Yeah, I love the scene before that where he goes back to the pirate planet and the leader goes to put the
helmet
beehive on his head.
Yes.
And he pulls a fast one. And I guess the guy's reaction time is slow, but I love that panel where he's just sitting there going, ick, ick, ick.
Yes.
So at this point, this guy really thinks he's got it made. Not realized. Now, if you had just realized that the guy that put the plan in motion was planning to double cross you, wouldn't you be a little bit more suspicious of everybody? And maybe,
well, they're called the Legion of Supervillains, Bree. Come on, they might as well have told him they were going to screw him over.
Yeah, I mean, maybe if they'd been called the Legion of those dedicated to screwing over Dynamo Boy, he might have suspected something.
Yeah.
So it's just,
I love the picture when he gets stranded. He's just like sitting on a rock with his hand on his chin. Like, I'm going to sit here for a while.
Well, that's a great panel too, because they're just so the camera setup is nice that they can look at him sitting there on that angle from the year, in the 30th century, and just be like, oh yeah, no, that's cool. We have technology to look that far into the future.
So shockingly, Joe, I expected this character to come back. I've never read this story. Mm-hmm. He does not. He's stuck there in the year 1 trillion AD. So I was like, They have to have done something with Dynamo Boy Vorm since then. I go and I try to read up on the character. He's never been seen from again. He's never showed up.
It's weird because a lot of Legion villains do come back, and he's a rare exception. But this is also the first 2-part, as in 2 multi-issues, so like 2-issue Legion story. First one in 1965, which a lot of people kind of act like DC didn't do too much in terms of like 2-parters in the Silver Age, and that they were that far behind the times. But I mean, even Marvel wasn't doing a ton of multi-issue stories like this at the time. They would have a strong continuity. Mm-hmm. And, have villains return, have plot threads that get started and then conclude later on. But they also didn't have too many direct, like, here's a cliffhanger, you have to get the next issue. So, the Legion was at least kind of keeping closer pace to Marvel than some of the other DC books at the time.
That's great. Breen, we've got a 55-year cliffhanger here. When is somebody going to bring back Dynamo Boy as like DC's version of Doctor Doom, where he's been like all messed up from being in the future and he comes back to destroy everybody?
Well,
it's like he's just waiting.
As I said earlier, there are 3 of us here. 2 of us are fans. 1 of us is a professional.
Exactly. You got to get that on that. You got to get that going, Joe.
Help us, Joe. You're our only chance.
I would, given the opportunity. I promise.
he's waiting there to be exploited and come back and destroy everything. So I thought that was cool. It was unexpected. I really thought that this character would come back, but he doesn't. So we end up having like kind of something that you see in the Silver Age a lot. Superboy contacts the supervillains in the Legion's clubhouse. He says, you know what? We're going to challenge you to a duel to win back our Legion of Superhero membership. Shockingly, they agree to it, Joe. And Superboy, Element Lad, and Mon-El take them out with relative ease. They realize they're trapped on an asteroid that's about to get hit by a meteorite, so they kind of give up rather than die. And the Legion of Superheroes, they all get their membership back. Nice story.
That wraps up pretty quick. I mean, they did in, 3 pages there with the duel and the conclusion, what easily would be an entire issue, if not 2 issues alone of just that.
Oh, yeah.
Did anybody notice we basically saw the same thing 2 weeks ago when we did the first JLA JSA crossover with the Crime Syndicate?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But DC they were in those days, they were big on the setup, but the payoffs came quick.
Yeah.
Like by the time it was battle time, the heroes generally won pretty easy.
And that happens in the second story that we're about to get to as well. When a push comes to shove, Superboy ain't breaking a sweat. He's going to knock you on your tail.
Oh yeah,
for the most part. So that was a fun story. I thought it was great. Bring back Dynamo Boy. Vorm needs to return to the DC universe sooner than later, in my opinion. That was a lot of fun. For the second story, we do have Edmund Hamilton, the writer you were talking about earlier, that's done a lot of sci-fi work. He comes in to write the second story. Joan Forte is the penciler. The first issue has George Klein on inks. Adventure Comics 332, the Super Moby Dick of Space.
Yes,
this is a great one shot, but it does lead up to the last 2 issues that we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
So essentially, the Legion of Superheroes have unsuccessfully challenged this monster named Super Moby Dick. Lightning Lad is injured when his powers are deflected back at him, and it's carrying some type of toxic energy. And I was kind of surprised to see this, Eric Breen. I was not expecting him to get his arm amputated and for him to wake up with a mechanical arm. Kind of drastic for the 1960s, isn't it?
You should have, because the toxins were so toxic that they changed the color of his shirt, not just his arm.
They sort of gave it away on the cover too, because he does have a metal arm.
That's again, but the issue before, we saw somebody obliterated. So I think you're maybe starting to see it kind of just toying with a little bit, some themes that may not have been
raising the stakes
as suitable for the age they were going for. Maybe that was showing, because I always said even the Legion stories of this era seem to aim a little bit higher than the other superhero books. Not the sci-fi Western war and romance, but this one. This one kind of, like I said, I'm sure this might have surprised some parents looking through Junior's comics and seeing, wow, this guy. But they didn't show the arm come off. I mean, but still,
they just talk about it.
Yeah, that is kind of a borderline mature theme, I guess. Certainly for the 60s DC superhero book.
For sure.
Absolutely. And Joe, the design of Super Moby Dick, I love everything about this story, but it is an enormous catfish with some dragon wings on it.
Yeah.
I wish they could have done a little more with it.
it's a weird design. I mean, granted, I wouldn't want to run into this thing, but
I'll give you that. If it was a giant space fish with dragon wings, I wouldn't want to mess with it.
Yeah, but yeah, no, it's interesting here that this happens, and like Lightning Lad has really bad luck, and they get into this with the Luck Lords and stuff like that, which we're not touching on. But I mean, prior to this, he was the first Legionnaire to die and then come back. His brother is Lightning Lord, and then later on, more awful stuff happens to him, including being one of the few Legionnaires in the 30th century there to get a receding hairline.
It's not cool, bro.
It's really not. But but yeah, so he suffers a lot. But no, it's great here. This is
he becomes obsessed with this monster, Joe. That's what it is. It kind of ties into Moby Dick. his friends start believing, and this is something that you do not do in the Legion of Superheroes, that he's going to violate the Legion charters to pursue his revenge. So Superboy, he's trying to stop Lightning Lad from killing it. He ends up kind of getting himself hurt, and then Dr. Lanfear, I think this is the first, maybe only appearance, kind of starts explaining the dark truth behind all this, that the creature originally was normal-sized brain, and that Lightning Lad himself made it grow. And he reveals to him how he can shrink it back to normal.
Yeah, I missed the part where it said that Lightning Lad was responsible for that. I thought it was the experiment that got away from him and caused him to mutate.
Well, the experiment caused him to mutate. The issue is it's you can't stop him the way Lightning Lad was fighting, because he absorbs the energy. It's
like the Hulk. When you mess with him, he gets bigger.
Yeah, but no, this is all great. Where they're not trusting Lightning Lad. They got to figure out a way to stop this thing, but they can't figure it out. They go to this planet, the world of the dead robots, which I like to think, Evan Hamilton wrote that in case, robots in the future ever got this comic and were like, wait a minute, without the humans, we can't repair ourselves. When we eventually take over Earth, we better not stop all the humans. Like,
we're going to need somebody to do the manual labor.
Yeah, like that. That's how I like to think he approached writing this.
So it's all good setup, and then the Legion decides they need to stop Lightning Lad. They don't know that he's learned this secret, so they think he's killing the monster. He's not. They realize he's actually just shrinking it back down to size. Then he starts relaying the information that Lanfear had actually told him, and Lanfear apologizes to Lightning Lad because he kind of feels guilty for what happened to his arm. And then there's another doctor that says, this is the weirdest part, Joe, that they're starting an arm and leg bank, and hopefully in the future they will have an arm or a leg ready for Lightning Lad.
Yeah.
An arm bank. It was just like hey, there's an arm in there if you need an extra.
Yeah, I love it. I love that kind of just optimistic science fiction.
Well, it's a new twist on the old, it's going to cost you an arm and a leg. Here you actually get an arm or a leg.
Yeah, you're going to have to do something. So that kind of wraps it up. That is a standalone story, but it leads directly into Adventure Comics 335, Starfinger. Also Edmund Hamilton, John Forte on pencils. Sheldon Moldhoff will be the inker on the next two issues. Mm-hmm. And we kind of we got Lightning Lad. He's in the hospital, obviously still being treated for his arm. The Legion, they go visit him, and he's under the care of somebody named Dr. Hascom. And then they actually have to leave pretty fast because I guess there's a new element that's been discovered called Rejuvium. You guessed it, it has healing properties, Breed. They got to go and they have to help the prospector that's found it. And there's a costume criminal named Starfinger that comes in to steal it, but the Legion barely hold him off. This is, I guess, the first appearance of Starfinger. Not the greatest costume ever, but he's going to be a very formidable villain in this story. Breed.
Yeah, the DC villains in this day did seem to have kind of silly looking costumes.
Yes.
Yeah, this is good setup there. He's got he's got his henchmen. I said it's just good. Yeah, and of course they don't get it. He gets to ball them out, and it's just a great setup for what's to come.
Absolutely. And what comes is my favorite part, Joe, and I got to get into it. I'm sorry. But the idea in the 30th century that there's the 7 wonders of the 30th century, and Starfinger is going to destroy all of them unless they give him the Rejuvium because he wants the technology.
Yeah.
I love this kind of science fiction. There's a city that apparently is like on tracks and it's going around the Earth. It's a city that spans Earth. There's a tunnel all the way through Earth. There's all kinds of these weird things happening that they're gonna destroy. And there's actually statues of like Mozart and like Ben Franklin and stuff.
Oh yeah, yeah. Lincoln's there too. Like it's really great that they have these specific 30th century wonders, like you were saying, and just the way they're drawn. It's so like innocent and sweet when you look at this, like John they're telling John Forte, you got to make this city on tracks that's going to go around the world. And he's like, all right.
Of course, now we have Snowpiercer, a more adult take on what this city kind of represents in the future.
Yeah.
And he attacks that city that's on rails that's circling the Earth. Starboy is gravely wounded. Mon-El takes him and has to retreat to a nearby star to kind of heal him up. And this is the kind of stuff I love it.
Oh, yeah.
This is my kind of science fiction show.
Yeah, no, you're gonna love just diving into the Silver Age Legion because it's so fun. It's so much of this stuff.
And so the next thing he decides to attack is the Stratosphere Laboratory. And this time, Breen, they fail to stop Starfinger. But as he's escaping after having destroyed it, Saturn Girl reads his mind, and wouldn't you know it, dun dun dun, he's a member of the Legion of Superheroes.
Yeah, but she doesn't know which one.
Yes, the mystery is still there.
So we have at least one more mystery to solve in the second half of part 2. So that's the cliffhanger for between 335 and 336. But you ever get the feeling that not much happened between the 21st and 30th centuries? If all of the monuments are the 20th century.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a little bit. It's
still venerable leaders of world history. That gets us into Adventure Comics 336, the true identity of Starfinger. We've been waiting for this one, and it turns out Brainiac 5 has revived and healed the Legion of Superheroes so they can resume their mission against Starfinger. And he destroys this tunnel that's running through the Earth. There's these statues of historical figures that we mentioned earlier. He starts destroying them. Then finally, this building has a wonderful name. He's going to destroy the fusion power sphere. I love that. Mm-hmm. That is a great name for a sci-fi building. The Legion stop him there because now they've got shields to protect him from their ray blast, Joe.
Yes. No, this is it's all so good. And then what was it? You get that. You get going through the center of the Earth there in that tunnel, and Superboy helping Matter Eater Lad. At one point
he's like holding him, isn't he? He's like trying to give a bear hug.
Yeah, but he's like, I'm invulnerable. You guys get out, and they're like, all right. Superboy can dig his way out of the center of the Earth. That's the confidence of these kids.
So at the fusion power sphere, when they stop him, they capture him, Breen, and finally they unmask him. Wouldn't you know it, it's a turncoat Lightning Lad the whole time, but Saturn Girl senses that he's under hypnotic control, and then when he comes to, it's been broken, Lightning Lad reveals that Dr. Hascom, who we've just met, actually was controlling him to get his hands on the Rejuvium the entire time.
Nope.
Yeah, before that, what I liked about this story was once Saturn Girl figured out that it was a Legion member, then you started to get the little distrust. Yeah, as they were working to find him. Said, like at one point said, he could be somebody in this room, and they suspect Chameleon Boy until they see him and Starfinger at the same time. So I did like that they put a little bit of that into the story.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and then like I said, when they unmask him, and figure out the plot from there, and I said again, once they figure it all out, it's kind of anticlimactic. Because
it is wrapped up pretty shortly, Joe, because it turns out Hascom is actually his hideout is in the fusion power sphere. They're already there the whole time, and he's managed to force the United Planets to hand over the Rejuvium at this point. But once Superboy arrives, he realizes he's got no chance. He just kind of gives up, and they get the Rejuvium back to the United Planets.
Yeah, no, it's they tie it up pretty nicely here, but it's interesting when you think about these two-parters, as well as the Moby Dick in Space, which kind of leads into this one. Both stories, in terms of the two-parters, are basically the Legion fighting younger characters who are being like manipulated by adults. It's interesting when you think about it that way, because a lot of times before this, the Legion's mostly fighting adults or the occasional disgruntled, rejected Legionnaire. And so it's interesting seeing sort of the evolution of the Legion from here. We're still about a year away from Jim Shooter and Kurt Swan's like run on the book, but Edmund Hamilton and John Forte do just incredible work as well, which I think unfortunately gets overshadowed by Jim Shooter coming on board. But
yeah, well, legend of Jim Shooter. He's 15 years old. He's a wonderkin, and he's obviously going to end up becoming the EIC of Marvel at a very young age and have a ton of success there as well. Yeah, because then you get that, but not long after that, then you get Carrie Bates and Dave Cockrum, followed by Carrie Bates and Mike Grell, and then Jim Shooter kind of coming back at that point. So like the Legion really just continues ramping up from here. There's a couple of more two-parters that happen before Shooter. The introduction of Computo, who is another fun villain. That's the death of one of the triplicates from Triplicate Girl that turns her into Duo Damsel and all that stuff. But yeah, it's still an exciting time to be a Legion fan at that point, Oh, absolutely. This is fun. I'm glad you mentioned Mike Grell. Obviously, this is a little bit off topic here, Joe.
Sure.
But when I was in the hospital, I had some comic books to read, and one of them that I read was The Longbow Hunters, written and illustrated by Mike Grell. I'm not the biggest Green Arrow fan.
Sure.
Man, that is a dynamite comic. That is one of the best illustrated comic books I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, yeah. No, Mike Grell is incredible. His work on Legion, I absolutely adore. Obviously, what you mentioned, as well as John Sable Freelance is an all-time favorite of mine. First Comics put out some incredible stuff in the 80s. A lot of people reference, Howard Chaykin's American Flag and all that. But yeah, Sable, fantastic. And yeah, his Legion work with Carrie Bates, Jim Shooter, and all that.
Warlord.
Top notch. Yeah, and of course, Warlord as well.
Yeah, so that was good stuff. I had such a fun time I didn't have a fun time in the hospital, but reading all those comic books while the wife and the newborn were sleeping, just kind of catching up on that stuff. And that one really stood out because I had no expectations. Someone had suggested it as a good Green Arrow book. And I was like, well, I haven't really read a good one, so I checked it out. I was like, well, this is one of the best things I've read. So I quite enjoyed this Legion of Superheroes story, or both of them. We got a one-shot. We got two-parters. Yeah. A lot of fun to be had here. A lot of the just wonderful sci-fi tropes that I've always loved since I was a little kid. Seeing these things, at late night on TCM and TNT and TBS, or perhaps on the weekends, when I was visiting the grandparents and stuff. So I really like these kind of is what Breen would call silly kind of stories. I just think they play out so much fun. Yeah. You have so much fun in these kind of stories, and it's really wonderfully done.
Oh yeah.
Breen, do you have any last words about the Legion of Superheroes, or what your thoughts are on Edmund Hamilton and Jerry Siegel's contribution to the characters?
Well, I said that. Yeah, I make fun of the silly aspects of the stories, but I love them. You get so much packed into a 2-part story that, like I said, if they did it today, would take a year. And it's just like how much characterization they put into, just like Dynamo Boy, in and out in 2 issues, but that was enough time you hated that little shit.
Yes,
and then you realize, well, yeah, apparently so did the people he worked with, and they're like
double crossed twice.
Yeah, I mean, a lot like the panel where he goes, "Look, I know you guys haven't reformed, but here's the thing. I'm even more evil than you, and we'll do good deeds by day, but by night, woo-hoo." And then the last panel, it's like the end of a segment of a sketch show where they're all just sitting at the table laughing maniacally, as supervillains are wont to do.
Yeah.
And just, I said, there's just so many fun things to point to in this that I don't think you get in comics anymore for any number of reasons. But one of it is, like I said, nobody's allowed to just put just fun, silly aspects into stories anymore. And so if you want to get them, you kind of have to go back to stuff like this. And that's what makes these videos we do so much fun. Now, I mean, I'll be the first to admit, I mean, I read this again yesterday and had just enough time for my feeble brain to forget a lot of the details. But I do remember this was fun. Yeah. And I said, it made me want to, if I'd had more time, I would have read the issues in between. Yeah. And now I just want to go read the whole thing again. Yes, because that's what fun stories kind of make you want to do.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, Eric's got a good point here. So I love Arcade as a villain. He's one of my favorite villains, probably my favorite villain at Marvel, just because he's so outlandish and out there. The way that he's going to get the heroes, he's going to create the most dangerous, rides ever, carnival type rides or whatever. And you see that character in the 80s and even into like the 90s or whatever. And it's always like that. But if you see him nowadays, he's not really that fun. I still love the character, but he's not really presented as fun and like weird anymore, Joe. He's got to be super serious. And I do miss comic books celebrating the fact that they're comic books and the insanity of a lot of what they're portraying.
Oh, for sure. I think there's just some things that come off as like a little off in some of more recent interpretations of different characters. But I also think some of that is just by virtue of their longevity. And, the farther you get away from something, the easier it is to, have it get derailed. But this stuff is great. Myself and Breen read it through the Legion Archives Volume 4. And these stories are also included in the Legion of Superheroes Silver Age Omnibus Volume 2, which is also available. I definitely recommend people pick up all 3 of those omnibuses or get all the back issues if you can. But the 3 omnibuses are going to be the cheapest way to quickly sort of scoop up and have that entire run of that era. And then I would also recommend just reading everything straight through Crisis on Infinite Earths. And then from there, it's, a choose your own adventure. Some people really like the Keith Giffen, Burbaum's DNA sort of run on that. Some people prefer, what like Mark Waid did with Legion of Superheroes and Supergirl and the Legion of Superheroes. There's different sort of tracks you can take, but I
skip the Bendis.
Yeah.
A lot of dialogue.
I hope this did a little bit to cleanse your palate of the Bendis run, Wes.
No, I definitely want to go back and see these characters a little bit more. So, Joe, since you and I have known each other, and obviously we have conversations off camera, you've mentioned the Legion of Superheroes more than any other comic hero that I could think of. Is this your favorite superhero team? Is it your favorite book of all time? Like,
it might be, yeah. There's a lot of choices, I also love Superman, which I think is what kind of helped, that kind of gets you into the Legion because it's, Superman family book. But just everything they did with the Legion, the Legion's importance to comic history. A lot of people came from the Legion. They came from the fanzines. The Legion Outpost is easily one of the most well-known and popular those fanzines that were going on in the 70s. You get Jim Shooter and Paul Levitz, who both went on to lead their different companies. You don't get Claremont's X-Men run in the same way without the Legion. If Cockrum didn't become incredibly popular from doing the Legion, he doesn't get the gig doing the X-Men reboot. There's just a lot of things here that it affects.
And it's playing out right now. I know that's why you like that second issue of Green Lantern so much, because it was answering so many questions unexplained, between now and then for the Legion.
Yeah, no, that's what Jeffrey Thorne's been doing with Green Lantern. He's a huge Legion fan, and he likes a lot of the same stuff from Legion that I do. So he's answering certain questions and going into things that I'm interested in, which really helps, with that run. But I mean, you just go through and just like the love and interest and the intensity too from Legion fans. It's hard to find groups of people who are, just so into, a book like that, and that there is so much lore. The amount of characters in each of these issues that you read. I mean, you look at the roll call; it's like over a dozen characters.
Yeah, it's like 15 or 16.
Yeah, and
that's just the Legion, because you've got the Legion of supervillains and this Legion of substitute heroes in the one book.
Yeah, and part of it too is because there were so many characters, a lot of them didn't get necessarily as fleshed out. And that's kind of what helped create a big fandom around them, because people could kind of insert themselves, or, they would have their own favorite characters and dive in and flesh them out themselves. And that helped to create what would be, that sort of like comics fandom. So.
All right. Well, fellas, thank you so much. This was a great read. Next time we're going to be doing, is it Captain America? Jim Steranko?
Yes. All the 3 Steranko issues of Captain America, 110, 111, 113.
All right. So we'll do that one next week, and I do appreciate it. I'll see y'all later.
Yeah.
See ya.